I don't know that much about this. This is for, I guess, South Carolina. South Carolina has, I guess they were doing a redistricting map to try to redistrict, to get rid of like the one black district, I think, in South Carolina. And I guess the Republican controlled Congress, or like, the Republicans refused to take up the new map. So I'm going to learn about this with you guys. I don't really know exactly why they decided to do that or what, but let's go ahead and watch this.
Carolina's Senate rejected a new congressional map Republicans had hoped would eliminate the state's only Democratic seat held by Clyburn for more than 3 decades. A procedural vote to end debate on the map failed after 12 Republicans joined Democrats to vote against it. The state Senate then moved to adjourn until June 10th, the day after South Carolina's primaries, making it highly unlikely any redistricting effort will take place in time for the midterms. Congressman Clyburn issued a statement yesterday after that vote, commending state senators, writing in part, members of the South Carolina State Senate stood up for the constitutional principles they say they believe in. Join us now, the host of Politics Now on MS Now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's president, of course, of the National Action Network. Rev, good morning. It's hard, first of all, to imagine South Carolina politics without James Clyburn, but it's even more difficult to imagine a state like South Carolina not having a majority black district. But now it looks like, thanks to a handful of Republicans jumping over the fence to vote with Democrats, that'll be at least pushed down the road for a while.
Given the population in South Carolina and the percentage of,
I would say that it's probably not going to, it's probably going to be redistricted again eventually. We are in like a race to the bottom situation right now where everybody is just redistricting to, in order to get as much political advantage as possible. It sucks. It's like we can't have nice things, apparently. I would much rather have independent district, drawers that are like not party affiliated or party backed in any way. However, that's not the situation we live in. So I do agree with like California and various other blue states, like redistricting the hell out of their states in order to get rid of all the Republican districts. Like, in my opinion, every blue state should just have one Republican district and like 30 Democrat districts. Like that's what we got to do until we can finally get this situation under control through legislation, I guess. But our system is so far away now at this point from even being like capable of passing a piece of legislation that is like not just like budgetary or whatever, that we're probably gonna be living in this hellscape for a while.
of black residents, it would have been unthinkable to wipe out the only black district and the only Democratic district. Aside from the fact Jim Clyburn has earned iconic status there, civil rights leader into Congress for all these years. But I really think the real news was that some Republicans stood up and said, I just can't do this. Reverend Nelson Rivers, who...
That is very surprising to me. However, don't give them fucking credit here. I hate when liberals are like, see, there are some good Republicans. Like, I hate that shit so fucking much. You should not give them credit. I mean, you can give them a little bit of credit, but do not glaze them. They will eventually turn on it, probably. Like, they will eventually turn on it. I just think that it's a little bit like, I get very frustrated because like liberals in particular, like MS Now sort of liberals or whatever, they love a good Republican defection, like because they think it revalidates, because here's the problem. They want to re-empower the Republican Party. That is what they want. They want, as Hillary Clinton famously said, a strong Republican Party, right? That is what a lot of these liberals want. So anytime there is even a remote liberal or like a Republican defection to like normalcy, like no longer being like an insane racist just freak, right? Like just going back to just being like, I don't know, like a standard like, dog whistle racist freak. Like they're like, hell yeah, see, Republicans aren't that bad, right? Because because that's what they want. Whereas I, on the other hand, want to decimate and destroy these people. I want them to be like so far away from the realm of power that they I don't know, that they have to like beg. They have to beg for like one of for even like a tiny scrap of power. That's what I want. That's what I want. And so that's why it just frustrates me a little bit when they do that. But
his National Action Network for us in South Carolina was there every day, and he kept telling me, no, some of these Republicans are going the other way. And I said, really? And it ended up being that way. And I think this might be a story that a lot of us are not looking at, that a lot of people, even in the Deep South, are saying, wait a minute, but so far I'm going to go. I may announce different reasons, but in their heart, they know it's wrong.
Nah. See, that's rewriting it. That's giving too much credit to them. They may have made a good decision this one time. They may have. That's perfectly fine. And you can give them credit for that one good decision if you want. However, do not expect this to continue. Do not expect the Republicans to get better. And do not stop trying to take away all of their power constantly. That would be my recommendation. That's how you should handle it.
Well, I mean, and let's look. There were people in Indiana that voted the way they voted, Republicans against redistricting, and 5, 6 of them lost. So this actually was a profile in courage, making sure they didn't kick out a civil rights icon, a civil rights hero, just an extraordinary man, extraordinary leader, James Clyburn. That was. Again, we need to stop when that happens, like we did in 2020 when there were Republican election officials up in Michigan and in Georgia that actually stopped and said, wait a second, we're not going to follow you down this trail to destruction.
And when people...
Guess what, though? Guess what? Those people are going to be gone. They're probably going to be gone next cycle, though, because Trump will have them kicked out. I think that's what we need to also recognize, is that if there are any good Republicans, or that's kind of anathema. Like, it's not really possible, I guess. But if there are Republicans who occasionally do a good thing, they will get kicked out. They will get kicked out of the party eventually. So that's the other thing.
People do stand up and do the right thing on the Republican side. We need to stand up and loudly say they did the right thing. The history of the civil rights movement was all...
You can say they did the right thing, and you can I don't care if you give them a little bit of credit, but the reason that I get so frustrated is, like I said before, is that Morning Joe and or Joe Scarborough and all of these people, they just want to re-empower Republicans. That's what they want. They want Republicans to stop being so crazy so that we can get back to having a normal, strong Republican Party, without realizing that this current iteration of the Republican Party is the natural conclusion of the Republican Party's politics over the past 60 years. They were always heading in this direction. It was easily foreseeable. And so it's really the way that they talk about it that makes me the most frustrated. They want to get down on their knees and fucking suck off any Republican who is slightly less crazy, and it just really annoys me.
Always reconciliation, and we had a small example of that yesterday. Some of them may have done it because they feel that their districts would have been impacted, but whatever the reason, they came to a conclusion that we benefit from, and we should.
Well, that was honestly, I think that's probably more likely the actual reason. It was selfish. It's probably selfish. It's probably selfishness, if I had to guess. And like I said, they might be gone next cycle because Donald Trump will have them, primaried or whatever.
To be just as open and vocal about saying that's the right thing as we are the wrong. Because the stories could have been, here's another reinforcement of the old South again. Right. And yesterday, the opposite happened in South Carolina.
Well, and let's move to Alabama, where a federal court has blocked Alabama from using its newly drawn congressional map in this year's midterms. A 3-judge panel, which included 2 judges appointed by President Trump, determined the redrawn districts intentionally discriminate against black voters. Alabama's attorney general immediately appealed.
Yeah, this is how it's going to go, though. They're just going to get it up to the Supreme Court and let the Supreme Court, give them whatever they want. That's how it's going to go. Also, the sad part as well. I mean, I don't want to get people too doomer, though, but I mean, if Democrats do redistrict like intentionally to diminish Republican power or whatever, I guarantee you there will be, people funding lawsuits to then challenge that up to the Supreme Court so that the Supreme Court denies that. Like, so it'll essentially, because we're getting to the point where like the Supreme Court just says when Republicans cheat, it's legal. When Democrats cheat, it's illegal. Like that's essentially what the situation we're getting to now. And that's a very unsustainable situation. That is a situation that will have to rectify itself. I mean, hopefully non-violently, but potentially violently in the future. And so, like, I don't know. I don't know. I do get a little doomer that like one of the primary vehicles of like trying to affect change, because don't get me wrong, I've always known, or not always, but I know that America is a theoretical democracy, that the democratic process does not accurately reflect the will of the people, that it is largely bought and paid for by corporations and all of that stuff. However, it is a point of power, right? It is like one aspect of like influencing power and correcting on the worst impulses of our country. Is that at the very least you have the opportunity to like elect a new representative who then will hopefully do something for the people, right? It's not the only vector of power, like a lot of liberals seem to think. There's also organizing power, worker power, like just there are other vehicles of power outside of electoral power, but it is an important one. And I do feel like we're getting to the point now where it's like it's becoming so irrelevant that people are going to be much more likely to start taking like acts of vigilantism or like doing things like that in the future to try to affect change, because they see that as the only option. And so, yeah, it's a little disappointing. We'll see what happens, though, with this appeal. But I'm guessing it'll make it to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will say it's fine for Alabama.
Appealed the ruling, setting the stage for the Supreme Court to determine whether the maps can be used in November.
So Jeffrey, this has kind of been the rhythm of these things. The redistricting happens, the map gets changed, and then it's challenged in court. Or in the case of South Carolina, it goes to the assembly at the State House. And by and large, there's been big pushback, legal pushback, not surprising. We'll see what the Supreme Court says. But again, it may be longer than the Democrats may be okay for in terms of getting redistricted in many of these places, for the midterms at least.
I think the Republicans, certain Republicans, were hoping for, magic bullet solutions from legislatures, from the Supreme Court. I think it's going to be ambiguous, more ambiguous, which obviously is to the benefit of democracy in November. But the long-term trends are continued agitation to redistrict in a way that is so ostentatiously geared against Democrats, majority black districts, for instance, that the trend lines are negative, but it's become much more of an ambiguous process, especially in the short term.
And the Supreme Court's last ruling, it's been a race, Rev, across the South to redistrict.
There's only so much minority rule that is tolerable, though, like by society at large. Like you can only get such like a small amount of representation, like before people just fucking rise up in arms. Like, so that's, I guess, my hopeful side is that if they do make it impossible for people to actually make changes electorally, or if they do make it impossible for people to make changes by organizing or by, going on national strikes or whatever, if they try to crack down with like police repression or whatever, like there is only so much that is possible to do before people just take up arms against their government and it's a new revolution or whatever. So I guess that's my whether you see that as a ray of hope or not, it's obviously there's a lot of political strife that comes from that sort of situation, but I do want people to understand that it's like there are limits to what people are willing to accept, and so we'll see how things go. I'm going to go ahead and move on, though.